You get Grayson Rodriguez rolling, you get Dean Kremer back, and you get a struggling Mariners offense. And what does that mean? The Orioles take the first two in Seattle with a couple of dominant pitching performances. I'll recap the first two games, plus get you some Orioles news on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast.
You are Locked On Orioles, your daily Baltimore Orioles podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Orioles fans, today is Thursday, July 4th, 2024, and welcome back into the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, I'm your host, Connor Newcomb, and coming up on today's episode, we're going to recap the last two games for the Orioles in Seattle, allowing just a total of one run over the previous 18 innings and winning the first two games against the Mariners. I'll recap both. Talk about amazing pitching performances from Grayson Rodriguez and Dean Kremer in his return to the mound, the Orioles bullpen staying hot, and the O's offense, while not dominating, getting the big swings and the big hits at the right times. Then at the end of the pod, talk a little bit more about the roster moves that brought back guys like Dean Kremer, and we got some positive all-star news on the Orioles on Wednesday as well. But that's all coming up on this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast, which is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. The right stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. So on this episode, as I record here after midnight on July 4th, as the Orioles game just wrapped up, the Wednesday night game as they beat the Mariners 4-1. I'm actually going to recap the first two games of this series because if you've been following along, just with these West Coast games during the week and my schedule, it is real tough to stay up late and record. But with the holiday Thursday, got a little more time to do so. Hopefully you enjoyed the Wednesday episode of the pod, kind of looking through my favorite 6 rental relievers that the Orioles could acquire by the trade deadline. So we have two games to recap here on today's episode. Let's rewind a little bit to Tuesday night and start with that one. Orioles open the series with a 2-0 win over the Mariners. And I'm going to get you the 5 things you need to know from that win on Tuesday night. The first thing you need to know is Grayson Rodriguez was absolutely superb in that one on Tuesday. Grayson's final line against the Mariners, 6 1/3 scoreless innings, 2 hits, 8 strikeouts, 4 walks, 104 pitches thrown, and just 5 hard hit balls by Seattle hitters. His ERA down to 3.45 on the season. And Grayson was just awesome. Now, his changeup was his best pitch. He yanked a couple of them right through it glove side into the dirt, kind of non-competitive. But most of those changeups he threw were outstanding. 28 changeups on the day for Grayson Rodriguez were the most changeups he has thrown in any start this season. 46 fastballs and 28 changeups is what he went with. And it was his go-to pitch to righties and lefties really all night. Now, the fastball command was a little bit iffy at times, and that is why he did end up walking 4 hitters. But, you know, when you throw shutouts, you don't want to walk 4. He lost a couple kind of high and arm side when he was trying to throw for the top of the zone. And he admitted that after the game. That was like his one issue on the night. So just a tiny little command problem. But otherwise, it was swinging stuff, and he was still getting a lot of swings and misses on that fastball. He got 8 of them on the 4-seamer, but he got 9 whiffs on the changeup, tied for his most swings and misses ever in any start in his career on that changeup. Overall, 19 swings and misses on the night was a new career high for Grayson Rodriguez. It was a total 41% whiff rate when you combine all 4 of his pitches on Tuesday night. It was just fantastic. Changeup after changeup. He mostly had a lot of those Mariners lefties hitters just they could not time up that change at all. It had great break, great deception. That is the pitch that we have heard about as Rodriguez climbed through the minor leagues. Like, this could be the difference maker. And it's getting better and better. And that was kind of the peak of it so far, what we saw on Tuesday. And he's now just dominated the Mariners this season. 12 1/3 scoreless innings in his 2 starts against Seattle here in 2024. I don't think Grayson Rodriguez would mind if the Orioles matched up with the Mariners in the first round of the playoffs this year. Now, the second thing you need to know from the Orioles' 2-0 win on Tuesday night is that Anthony Santander picked up right where he left off to start July. Now, we know how amazing his June was. 13 home runs in June for Santander, second most ever by an Orioles hitter in one calendar month, had a 959 OPS in the month of June, and he just kept it going right into July. The Orioles had July 1st off on Monday, July 2nd on Tuesday. Santander goes 2 for 4 with a couple of singles and an RBI. He opened up the scoring in this game in the fourth inning with just a classic Santander AB off of George Kirby. He fouls off 5 or 6 pitches, a 10-pitch at-bat, and he ends up going out to get a breaking ball that was off the plate away and just pulling it into right field for an RBI single to put the Orioles up 1-0. And it always seems like Santander has these log at-bats with these foul balls, especially against George Kirby, who only throws strikes. You can go into swing mode, and he always seems to get a hit. The deeper he goes into those counts, it happened again. Both of his hits came on pitches outside the zone. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the homers, but the hits keep coming. Wednesday night provides a double and 3 hard hit balls as well. Just keep giving the O's production from the middle of the order. Third thing you need to know is win on Tuesday is that besides Santander, there really wasn't much else that we saw from the Orioles offense. The O's had only 1 extra base hit in this entire game. It was a Ryan O'Hearn kind of ground ball shift beater the other way, a leadoff double in the 8th, and the O's could not bring him around to score. They ended up with 9 hits. It was 8 singles and a double on the night. And once again, they struggled a little bit with runners in scoring position. Went 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position in the game. They got the Santander RBI single in the 4th. They got the Mullins RBI single in the 7th off of Kirby, gave him a big insurance run to make it 2-0. But they had a chance to cash in. To be fair, they were facing George Kirby, but they certainly had a chance to do more. And honestly, some of their old friends kept them from doing that. It was Austin Voth, our old friend, who replaced George Kirby in the 7th, loaded the bases with 1 out, and then he strikes out Henderson and gets Rutschman to fly out to get out of that jam. Austin Voth still has some. He's a reliever now for Seattle. And then, like, Mike Baumann, our old friend Mike Baumann, who was DFA'd by the Orioles earlier this year, claimed and traded for by the Mariners, put a 0 in the top of the 9th on the mound to keep the game at 2-0. But the O's had some chances. They got 2 runs across, which ended up being enough. You would have liked it, especially with the bases loaded against Austin Voth. You would have loved with Gunnar and Rutschman up to get a big hit. It didn't happen. Ended up being enough. And, you're facing a great pitching staff, but get a little bit more. Fourth thing you need to know from that series opening win for the O's over the Mariners is that Yennier Cano and Cionel Perez cut out the walks in their outings on Tuesday, which was a big time sign for them. Cano came in for Grayson Rodriguez after he had walked a batter with 1 away in the 7th and came out of the game at 104 pitches. Cano came in, got a ground out and a strikeout to end the inning on just 8 pitches. And it's been a little bit of a struggle for Cano lately, especially with the command. He had walked 6 batters in his previous 9 appearances coming into Tuesday's outing, so it was big for him to retire those 2 batters. The O's went to Cionel Perez, who came in there and got a 1-2-3/8, and Perez had also been struggling with some walks. He had walked 5 batters in his previous 5 appearances coming into Tuesday, so really a great sign for both of those guys to find the strike zone again and get the Orioles some key outs in a very, very close game. And final thing you need to know from the Orioles' 2-0 win over the Mariners on Tuesday night to open up this series is that Craig Kimbrel somehow found a way to get this save and lock down the victory. It was not pretty, but it was save number 437 in Kimbrel's career, which at the time tied him with the legendary Francisco Rodriguez for 4th time, the former Oriole in K-Rod. But it was not, I'll say, the cleanest of 9th innings. We've seen worse 9th innings from Kimbrel. Don't get me wrong. He got the 3 outs. He put up the 0, but he starts the inning by hitting Luke Raley on a breaking ball that I couldn't even believe hit Raley, but apparently grazed the pant leg to put him on base. Then Cal Raleigh is ahead in the count, hits a fastball 430 feet down the right field line, and luckily it hooks just foul on the other side of the pole for just a long strike. I mean, it looked like he was tying with a 2-run homer. Instead, it's just a strike. Kimbrel strikes him out, then grazes barely the toe of Jorge Polanco on a breaking ball. So he hits 2 batters. Only the second time in Kimbrel's career he had hit 2 batters in an outing. The other time was in 2022 with the Dodgers. And then he kind of settles back in. He says, right, let's stop throwing it near guys. Gets can zone to ground out, and then kind of what a battle. Second and third, 2 outs, 2-0 game, bottom 9. The struggling but still star Julio Rodriguez is at the plate, and Kimbrel burns him, gets him to swing through a high fastball for the strikeout to end the game. It showed some gusto from Kimbrel, like to hit the 2 batters in the way he did. That might have been the least combination of like how much of a person's body you get on 2 hit by pitches in 1 inning, maybe in baseball history. I mean, barely. I mean, obviously they were balls and breaking balls way out of the strike zone, but like barely hitting Raley and then Polanco, and he still found his way out of the inning to pick up the save. And hey, I've said it all year. I said it at the beginning of the year. I said it when the Orioles signed Kimbrel. It won't always be pretty, but generally he'll get the job done. He did it, put up another 0 and another save for the Orioles as they took the opener, shutting out the Mariners. And then they turned things over to game 2. And it wasn't getting any easier for the O's, facing George Kirby in game 1, then the great Logan Gilbert, who was coming off maybe being the best pitcher in the American League in the month of June. But the Orioles were getting somebody back as Dean Kremer returned off the injured list and to the mound on Wednesday. And the Orioles, once again, outpitched the M's and got the victory. I'll tell you how they did it coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Ibata. Now, I'm sure you're doing plenty of shopping, especially this summer: sandals, sunscreen, snacks for the kids. What do those have in common? Well, you're probably buying a ton this summer, but don't stress out about the cost. You can use Ibata and get cash back on all of your purchases when you stock up on all of your summer essentials. Ibata is a free app that lets you earn cash back every time you shop. Earn on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies, even toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. The average Ibata user earns $256 per year. You can save on over 2,000 brands and over 1,000 retailers, including your favorite grocery stores, places like Lowe's, Macy's, Best Buy, and more. It's just time to join over 50 million users who use Ibata to get cash back every time they shop. And right now, Ibata is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibata by using the code LOCKEDONMLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibata app to start earning cash back, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. That's IBOTA, Ibata, in the Google Play or App Store, and use code LOCKEDONMLB. So the Orioles grabbed the win in game 1, 2-0 in this series. Then on Wednesday night, they came back with another W in game 2, winning it 4-1 late on Wednesday night with that 10:10 p.m. Eastern time start. Yeah, that was a little tough. I'm sitting here, it's almost 1 a.m. Eastern time on Thursday as I'm recording, but hey, stayed up to watch a pretty good looking Orioles win. And here's the 5 things you need to know from that Orioles win that got the O's to now 55-31 on the season. And oh, guess what? Shout out to the Cincinnati Reds, who have taken the first 2 games in Yankee Stadium this week from the Yanks, and the Orioles now have a 2-game lead on New York in the AL East. But the first thing you need to know from that Wednesday win is that Dean Kremer looked great in his return. Kremer activated off the injured list on Wednesday, coming back from that right tricep strain that has kept him out for about a month and a half now. Since May 20th, he is out. And he just came out there and gave the Orioles 5 scoreless, 5 strong innings, and it's exactly what they needed. 5 scoreless for Dean, 2 hits, 8 strikeouts, and 83 pitches for him, just 3 hard hit balls by Mariners hitters in this one. And like the velocity was kind of fluctuating with all of his fastballs. You know, he throws the 4-seamer and the sinker and a cutter, and he was as low as 89. He was up to 95 with the fastball, and that was probably a little bit of just knocking off the rust, coming back to a big league mound, losing it, finding it again, all that good stuff. But the pitch I want to talk about is the splitter, because he threw 83 pitches, 34 seamers, that was the most used pitch, but then 26 splitters, the most he has ever thrown. It is a new pitch for Kremer here in 2024. Had 7 whiffs on 16 swings against that splitter. It was ridiculous. It was similar to how much success Grayson Rodriguez had with his changeup, very similar pitch, in the game on Tuesday night. He attacked hitters the same way Grayson did the night before. They fed off each other and went after this struggling lineup. And that splitter was incredible. Dancing all over the place, getting swings and misses, beating the lefties. That was watch from Dean Kremer. And now he never really got like a full go on rehab. He made 3 rehab starts in AAA before returning. He never completed 5 full innings because he struggled in some of those rehab starts. So because of that, it felt like he wasn't fully built up, but the O's wanted to get him back out there. So if you're wondering, oh, he was only at 83 pitches through 5 scoreless. The O's had a 4-0 lead. Why didn't they send him back out there? Well, it was 2, 3, 4 due up in the order, and Kremer not very good the third time through the order. The other thing was he wasn't fully built up. If this is his next start, he's probably good to push 90 plus up to 100. But they had a fairly rested bullpen as well, so the O's were able to pull him out. But I love what I saw. It was only 5 innings, and again, you're asking Dean Kremer to pitch deeper into games when he's built up again, and I think he should be. That splitter, it's been good in waves. Like, opponents are hitting under 200 against that pitch. He's getting a whiff rate up around 45%. It's been good, but he hasn't thrown it a crazy amount. He just went to it and relied on it and kept going back to it. And that was impressive from Dean Kremer in his return on Wednesday. Second thing you need to know about Wednesday win is that Ryan O'Hearn had the big hits for the Orioles in this one. Now, O'Hearn found out on Wednesday that he will not be an all-star starter, did not win the final round vote against Yordan Alvarez for the American League DH. But what he did on the field on Wednesday showed us that he at least deserves to be a reserve in the All-Star game. O'Hearn going in this game 2 for 3 at the dish. He drew another walk. He's now got 23 walks to 25 strikeouts on the season. 2 for 3 with a double and a home run in this game. The double got the scoring started, got a hanging breaking ball, hit it the other way, just off the glove of Julio Rodriguez in left center field for a 2-run double to open the scoring in the third, put the Orioles up 2-0, and then had a big home run in the fifth, just cranked the ball into right field. Solo shot made it 4-0 at the time off the bat of O'Hearn, 100 miles per hour off the bat, 379 feet for him. He's been playing first base recently, looked good out there defensively on Wednesday night as well. It's 3 straight multi-hit games for O'Hearn. He's up to an 840 OPS on the season. Let's get this guy to the All-Star game. Like, what a story that would be for Ryan O'Hearn to get to an All-Star game. Let's do it right now. Back in his home state of Texas, let's make it happen. Come on, managers, coaches, the people who decide players. Let's get Ryan O'Hearn to that All-Star game. Third thing you need to know from the O's win in Game 2 of this series on Wednesday is that Ryan Mountcastle, the other Ryan, who plays for returned to the Oriole lineup. Mountcastle, who had not been in the starting lineup since Friday. The Orioles said he had been dealing with an illness. I believe he'd come off the bench on Saturday. But really, since then, we had not seen Mountcastle. Well, he was back in the lineup. Didn't play the field, was just the DH hitting fourth in this game, but came through and plate and contributed to the Orioles offense like he had never left. He continued that rally in the third inning right after the O'Hearn 2-run double. Mountcastle took a pitch the other way into right field for an RBI single that made it a 3-0 Oriole lead. And that was just great to see because he is a big part of this Oriole lineup, sometimes an overshadowed this Oriole lineup because he's a little older than some of these other guys. Doesn't have the star power some of these guys have, but Ryan Mountcastle was also an all-star finalist, did not get selected at first base, but that's another guy. Let's get him into his first all-star game. He's been having a great season, delivered Wednesday, 773 OPS on the year. Fourth thing you need to know from Game 2 of this set is that Ramon Arias got the start in this one at third base, hitting ninth, and he tried to do everything he can to keep his job. He drew a walk in the third inning, really good AB to get on base, and that really started that rally. He was on first with 2 outs when the O's started to hit, ended up scoring 3 runs on Logan Gilbert. Mentioned by Kevin Brown on the broadcast, Logan Gilbert had only given up 1 run in the third inning all year coming into the start, and then the O's got him for 3. That really started with Arias drawing a walk. Then he singled in the fourth inning. That snapped an 0 for 17 skid that Arias was on after he had that really good stretch kind of in early to mid-June. Then he cooled off. Him get on base twice, play a solid third base in this game as well. And listen, we all know it. Kobe Mayo is back and healthy in AAA and is mashing the baseball, trying to get that defense where it needs to be. But Mayo is knocking on the door, and it would seem like if the Orioles do make a Kobe Mayo call-up at some point soon here, that Ramon Arias would be the guy to not just lose his playing time, but to lose his roster spot to make space for Mayo in that infield. So Arias, we know he has value to this Orioles team. He's trying to prove that he should stick around a little longer, and I think he took a good step toward that on Wednesday night. And the fifth and final thing you need to know from the Orioles 4-1 win over the Mariners on Wednesday night to take the second game of this series and clinch the first two in this 3-game set is that after Kremer left 5 scoreless, the Oriole bullpen came in and just kind of mowed through this Mariner order. And I really just got to say, like, Seattle has scored 1 run in 2 games in this series. It was a solo home run hit by Cal Raleigh off Keegan Aiken the 6th on Wednesday. That is the only run they have. This offense is abysmal. This is, I will say it, the best starting rotation in Major League Baseball. They got a good bullpen. This offense is abysmal. And a lot of it is how much Julio Rodriguez had struggled. Like, coming into this series, I knew Julio was nowhere close to what he was last year, was really, really struggling. I didn't realize that he's got a 616 OPS and is batting 7th in this Mariner order now. Like, even if he's really struggling, I feel like your young star, especially a lineup this bad, should be batting higher than 7th. But that's where he is right now. He's just not contributing to this order, and really nobody is. Mariners, 4 hits, 1 run in these 2 games. And granted, Grayson was great, Kremer was great, and the Orioles bullpen was great. Again, on Wednesday, Aiken got a couple of outs. Jacob Webb got 4 key outs. Cionel Perez looked good again, did allow a hit, but no walks, and got out of the 8th inning. And then they went right back to Craig Kimbrel, and he goes strikeout, pop up for a 1-2-3 save in the 9th, save number 438, now 4th all-time, all alone, as he passes K-Rod on the all-time saves list. And the Mariners just look lost up there. We knew coming in, their pitching is much better than their offense, and they are still in first place in the ALS, although the lead has slimmed to just 2 games over the Astros, who are, Orioles kind of kick-started them. They are coming for the Mariners, but just a combination of great pitching by the O's, terrible offense by the Mariners, and the Orioles have clinched this series, taking the first 2 games. But they will go for the sweep on Thursday, and they will have Corbin Burnes back out there to go for the sweep. We'll talk about that and a few other Orioles roster moves and news and notes to finish off the pod coming up next. But first, this episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. With summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you've always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yeah, we're talking about your rivals' cities with hotels, bed and breakfast, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. Now, I have still never been to Yankee Stadium, but here's the thing. Second to last series of the year, the Orioles are in Yankee Stadium. That series could decide the AL East. So you know what? Maybe I will think about making a trip up to New York in late September. And maybe I'll explore other things in the city besides just Yankee Stadium. From hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any U.S. city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com on the site or in the Booking.com app. And today's episode of the Locked On Orioles podcast is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets. I am kind of scouring Game Time right now. I'm thinking about going to at least one of the games at home against the Cubs next week. And I'm looking on Game Time because they've got flash deals. You can get even more with exclusive in-app deals for your events, including Orioles games. And you just keep looking at it to see when that deal might pop up at the right time for you. Take the guesswork out of buying MLB tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. So the Orioles have taken the first two games from the Seattle Mariners up in the Pacific Northwest and will look for the sweep today. And they will look for the sweep with Corbin Burnes on the mound. Burnes, who went on the paternity list over the weekend, was activated on Monday back to the roster. The Orioles gave him kind of one extra day to prepare. It helped that Kremer was back to start Wednesday, and Burnes will start this Thursday finale here, a 4:00 start for the Orioles, looking for this sweep. And when you're going for the sweep and you got Corbin Burnes on the mound, you are generally feeling pretty good about your chances at that point. It'll be the right-hander Bryce Miller with a 3.88 ERA going for the Mariners. The Orioles roughed up Bryce Miller a bit when they faced him back in Baltimore earlier this season. Now, I do want to congratulate Corbin Burnes, who came back after his wife gave birth to twin girls. Congratulations to him, hoping that he can get as much sleep as physically possible, but could be a little light for Burnes' workload. Like, you may see it be similar to Kremer, where he comes out at 80-some pitches, and you're like, he could have gone another inning. Well, probably didn't do all of his repertoire and all of his everything he does between starts, because, he was worried about his wife delivering two babies over the weekend and helping out with everything he could there. So because of that, it seemed like when Hyde talked about it a little bit this week and the reporting around it, that, if he comes out after 6 innings and 80 pitches, it's probably why he'll be good after one start, you would think, but just keep that in mind as you watch Thursday's game. Had to make a roster move, of course, and it was the one we knew they were going to make. The left-handed reliever Matt Krook was sent back down to AAA Norfolk to make room on the roster for Burnes. Krook was activated when Burnes went on the paternity list, made one appearance late in the game, Sunday Night Baseball on Sunday. Didn't pitch very well, gave up 3 runs, but I am fascinated by Krook's stuff. Actually saw a tweet about this. In terms of stuff plus, Krook threw the best pitch, stuff plus-wise, of any Major League Baseball pitcher on Sunday. It was a sweeper he threw to get a strikeout in that inning, which was, swept literally from off the inside corner to off the outside corner. It was ridiculous. He's got nasty stuff. If he hones it in, he can be a good big league reliever. I'm happy the O's still have him, but he goes back down to AAA. Now, we already mentioned it. The other roster move the Orioles made was to activate Dean Kremer off the 15-day injured list on Wednesday to start and pitch well in Wednesday night's game. He had been out since May 20 with that right tricep strain, but they had to make a move there, and it was Nick Vespi. That was the other prediction that I think we kind of all knew was coming. Nick Vespi optioned back down to AAA. The Norfolk shuttle continues for Nick Vespi. Now, I've seen a lot of people get worried, is that the last option that the Orioles have in Vespi? Per the new CBA rules, a player can be optioned down to AAA 5 times, a maximum of 5 times in a season. Now, technically, Vespi, when you look at his transaction log for 2024, the option on Wednesday was his 5th option of the year. But here is the caveat there. One of those 5 options in May was when the Orioles played that suspended game in St. Louis. It got suspended the one day. It got picked back up the next day. It was basically a doubleheader. They played like a game and a half, but it was treated like a doubleheader. And because of that, the Orioles were allowed to call up a 27th player for that doubleheader. The call-up was Nick Vespi. I believe he pitched in one of the games, and then they immediately sent him back down to AAA after the doubleheader to go back to 26 guys. When you call someone up to be the 27th man and send him back down, it does not count against that 5 maximum options. So actually, what happened Wednesday was just Vespi's 4th option here in 2024. That means the Orioles can freely call him up and send him down one more time without penalty. So let's say in early August, the O's need a reliever for a week or two. They call up Vespi, and then they send him back down. He'll be good to go back to AAA Norfolk. But if the Orioles want to call him up another time after that, say sometime in September, he would have to stay on the big league roster for the remainder of the regular season. Because if he doesn't, the Orioles would have reached the maximum amount of options for the season. And if they want to send him down, they would have to pass him through waivers and most likely lose him to another team for nothing if they did that. So this is option number 4. You get a max of 5, just something to keep in mind with Nick Vespi. Now, in terms of the Orioles rotation, that was probably the bigger question here of, okay, do they go to a 6-man rotation? Does someone move to the bullpen? I had basically been saying, look, Cole Irvin's been struggling lately. Albert Suarez had been struggling until he put up 6 scoreless over the weekend. I had talked about Cade Povich has been good enough that basically it was down to either Suarez or Irvin to go to the bullpen. I was still leaning Suarez, but the Orioles are going to go the other way. Brandon Hyde announced on Wednesday that Cole Irvin would be moving to the bullpen for the time being. Now, he has not been good lately. His last 3 starts have been a disaster. He's actually been pretty good out of the bullpen the last 2 years when he's been moved there for the Orioles. All of his data, all of his pitches, they kind of play up in that role, and he becomes a little more dominant as a left-handed reliever who can be a long man that the Orioles currently don't have in their pen and can give you multiple innings, can get lefties and righties out, which is nice to have in your pen. I will tell you right now, I do not think Cole Irvin spends the remainder of the year in the bullpen. He is going, no doubt about it, because the pitching situation the Orioles are in right now, he is going to make more starts for the Orioles at some point in 2024. But for now, Albert Suarez is going to start Friday night in Oakland. He will stay in the rotation. I still would have gone Suarez, but I see why, because quite frankly, if you look at it one way, you're like, Irvin has, had more track record as a starter, and maybe you give him a little more leeway. But on the flip side, Irvin's just been better in a bullpen role than Suarez has. So maybe keeping Suarez in the rotation, Irvin in the bullpen, makes the entire pitching staff a little bit better when making that decision. And again, it's all going to be fluid. We know the Orioles are dealing with these pitching injuries. To finish it off, just a shout out to Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman. Both were named all-star starters in the American League on Wednesday. Jordan Westberg, Anthony Santander, Ryan O'Hearn, and Ryan Mountcastle were all finalists, did not become starters, still could be voted in by the players and the coaches to get an all-star start. In terms of, or an all-star spot, I should say, in terms of the pitchers, Corbin Burns is a lock. Maybe Craig Kimbrel, maybe Grayson Rodriguez would have a chance as well. But I'm going to guess right now, besides Gunnar and Adley, they get Burns, they get Westberg, they get O'Hearn. That's going to be my guess. My guess is going to be 5 guys make the all-star team for the Orioles. But that'll do it for today's episode. Back tomorrow for one more pod this week, recapping the matchup of the final game of the series between the O's and the Mariners. Get you ready for the series in Oakland against the A's this weekend, and tell you about the Orioles' latest minor league signing, right-handed pitcher Vinny Natoli, who actually could, I think, maybe help the Orioles bullpen at some point this year. He's got some nasty stuff, weird arm angle, kind of a funky guy that could help them. We'll talk about him and much more on tomorrow's episode. But until then, I'm Connor Newcomb, and this has been the Locked On Orioles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.